Yes, in this episode we finish out our three-part retrospective of the early heroes of science fiction by taking a look back at the history of Flash. Stop! You're gonna get us a copyright strike.
The origins of Flash Gordon begin in the wake of the hugely popular Buck Rogers comic strip. Looking to duplicate that success, King Features Syndicate set out to create a similar strip for themselves. Their original plan was to license the John Carter character, but negotiations with Edgar Rice Burroughs ultimately fell through. King Features then tasked staff artist Alex Raymond with creating a wholly original character, and the first Flash Gordon comic strip appeared in newspapers in January of 1934.
Sorry, but I've been on the paleo diet lately. It's more than just a diet. It has a way of changing a man. Turning him into something more
primal.
Anyway, despite a similarity to other previously established characters, Flash Gordon wasn't considered anybody's cheap knockoff.
Readers responded instantly to the first Flash Gordon storyline, which finds our hero and his female companion Dale Arden abducted by a mad scientist by the name of Hans Zarkov. After taking the pair onto his rocket ship, he reveals his plan to stop a collision between the Earth and an approaching planet, which is later revealed to be none other than the planet Mongo, ruled over with an iron fist by Ming the Merciless. Raymond's art was highly acclaimed, the Comics Journal going so far as to compare it to Harold Foster's work on Prince Valiant.
The Flash Gordon comic strip was an instant success, but Flash would make his most enduring impact not on the printed page, but on the silver screen.
In 1936, Universal Pictures brought Flash to movie-going audiences everywhere in the form of the first-ever sci-fi film serial, shot on the comparatively large budget for the time of $350,000.
That's like $1 trillion in today dollars.
Well, not quite. Still, the budget was very generous for a movie serial in those days, but Universal's investment paid off. Audience response was strong enough to merit 2 follow-up serials, all of which were highly influential to future filmmakers. This text crawl from the third serial, Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe, may look particularly familiar.
I know, right? It's nearly identical to the one from that other classic movie.
Spaceballs!
What? It does. It looks just like it.
But as the movie serial format that had helped to make Flash a household name began to fall out of fashion, a new technology was emerging that would bring the miracle of the moving picture directly into people's homes. And as this new era dawned, it was only fitting that Flash be part of it. The Flash Gordon television program debuted in October of 1954 on the now-defunct Dumont Television Network and ran for 2 seasons. While the show itself did reasonably well, the Dumont Network struggled to compete with CBS and NBC and ceased broadcasting altogether in 1956.
And with the Dumont Network gone from the airwaves, so too was our hero. That is, until 1979 when he'd make a return to television, although this version of Flash would prove to be a bit more
animated. In 1979, FILMATION, the animation studio known for its cartoons based on properties like He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, Star Trek, and Rick Springfield, produced a made-for-TV animated movie entitled Flash Gordon, The Greatest Adventure of All.
And it's fantastic.
Seriously, it's amazing. I only just watched it in preparation for this episode, and I was blown away. The animation itself is a noticeable cut above the usual Filmation product, and while it has that classic Flash Gordon comic strip feel, it also has a more adult, almost heavy metal vibe to it. Darker and more violent themes underlie the simple escapism, and it elevates the source material beautifully while still remaining true to Alex Raymond's original strips.
And believe it or not, executives at NBC weren't overly impressed with Filmation's attempts at quality.
Yeah, like I said, the movie contains a lot of darker themes. Also, it's set against the backdrop of World War II and contains some Nazi imagery. NBC wanted something suitable for Saturday mornings, so the movie was shelved and retooled into a more kid-friendly animated series, which debuted in the fall of 1979. The New Adventures of Flash Gordon ran for 2 seasons before being canceled. The original feature-length movie did finally air in 1982, but has sadly never been commercially released in North America. It's that rare bit of buried treasure that's actually worth the trouble of seeking out, and thankfully it's not that hard to find and stream online. I highly recommend checking it out.
Flash's return to television came and went like a thing that appears and disappears really rapidly. A suitable metaphor escapes me, but it's not important because even as animators prepared Flash for TV, he was already being developed for something bigger. God Save the Queen.
Yes, the version of Flash Gordon that most people remember today came in the form of the 1980 film from famed Italian producer Dilo De Laurentiis. De Laurentiis purchased the movie rights in the 70s, and the project went through a few different possible directors, including none other than famed spaghetti western director Sergio Leone. George Lucas even attempted to license the film rights from De Laurentiis before going off on his own to make some non-Spaceballs related movie. Eventually, De Laurentiis settled upon Mike Hodges, director of films such as Get Carter and The Terminal Man, to bring Flash back to the big screen. In addition to newcomer Sam Jones, the movie features an impressive supporting cast including future Bond Timothy Dalton, the always gloriously over-the-top Brian Blessed, and of course the great Max von Sydow as Ming the Merciless. It's silly, it's goofy, but it's also big, colorful, and fun, and the music by Queen is of course fantastic. It's certainly deserving of its cult following, even if I personally happen to find it a bit too campy.
But now on to something a little more my taste.
Defenders of the Earth! Defenders!
Yeah, now that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm literally talking about. Right now. I'm talking about Defenders of the Earth.
Hitting the airwaves in 1985, Defenders of the Earth was basically like a Justice League made up of classic King Features Syndicate characters like Flash Gordon, the Phantom, Mandrake the Magician, and Lothar.
Different guy.
Produced on a partnership between King Features Syndicate and Marvel Productions, Defenders of the Earth finds the 4 classic comic strip heroes and their teenage kids teaming up to stop, wait for it, Ming the Merciless.
Spoilers.
But you know what? Unlike a lot of other villains from 80s cartoons that looked awesome but were actually buffoons, this Ming doesn't mess around. He often seems 1 or 2 steps ahead of our heroes and frequently catches them off guard. This could partially be due to Stan Lee himself serving as story editor on the show, and one thing's for certain, Stan knows how to handle villains.
And get this, Stan Lee actually wrote the lyrics to the theme song.
Yeah, how cool is that? The man himself wrote the lyrics to the theme song. But that's just the cherry on top. This was an overall awesome show that helped introduce these characters to a new generation of kids. At the time I'm making this video, it's available to stream on Amazon Prime. And whether you're a fan of these characters or just of that 80s cartoon vibe, it's totally worth checking out.
So yeah, Defenders of the Earth was awesome, and it's pretty much all downhill from there.
Another animated series arrived in 1996, this time featuring a teenage Flash Gordon. Anyway, look, in all seriousness, there's not a whole lot to say here. I'm not going to feign outrage to try and force a laugh. It ran for 26 episodes and nobody remembers it. Nor did I until I started researching this video and watched the pilot on YouTube, and I just didn't think it was very good.
No, not very good, but you know what? It wasn't this.
Yes, at last the time has come to talk about the much-maligned 2007 sci-fi series that ran for 21 episodes.
And you know what? Research shows that 21 is the exact number of episodes it takes before your audience starts to wonder what you were thinking.
Okay, so that's not true. People started to wonder right away. It didn't look or feel like Flash Gordon, and its eponymous hero was a grown man who still lived with his mom. And this is supposed to be Ming the Merciless. Yeah, so needless to say, this show wasn't well received. Reviews were scathing, and the UK magazine SFX went so far as to call the third episode the worst episode of anything ever.
Damn, son.
Damn.
And that's pretty much it along the lines of film and television up to this point. Still, it was a lot to get through.
So much, in fact, that I failed to mention the obligatory radio drama, which ran from 1935 to 1936. There have been a few novels, and there was even an attempt in 1936 to give Flash his very own pulp magazine. But that idea didn't take off, and only one issue of Flash Gordon's Strange Adventure magazine was ever published. And of course, there have been loads of comic books. Too many to cover in this episode anyway, but I have read a little bit of the more recent offerings from Dynamite Entertainment. And their modern retellings of old Golden Age pulp and comic strip characters are always recommended.
And that completes our look back on the three founding fathers of popular science fiction. But we're not done yet, are we? So be sure and come back whenever I feel like uploading again for more about classic sci-fi on page, screen, and beyond. Thanks for watching. I'm your host, Ray Kelly, and this has been Futures of the Past.